The crystal stem slipped from Dorothy Smith's fingers and kissed the marble with a brittle scream. The room went silent. Her hand, steady in boardrooms and hostile takeovers, trembled as she reached for the heart-shaped locket glinting against a white server's shirt. "Where did you get this?" Her voice cracked, a sound she hadn't made in 30 years. The young waitress froze, tray balanced on one palm, eyes wide but steady. Around them, chandeliers burned like captured suns, and New York's elite forgot to breathe. At the Grand Orpheus, a $23 pendant had just torn open a billionaire's armor, and the past prepared to walk in. The chandeliers in the private dining room at Laurent's cast light like liquid gold. Juliana moved between tables with practiced ease, her smile perfectly calibrated. Warm, but not familiar. Attentive, but not invasive. 8 years serving Manhattan's elite had taught her the dance. At table 7, Dorothy Harrington sat like a queen holding court. Designer suit, diamonds at her throat, silver hair swept into a flawless chignon. Her guests laughed at something she'd said, the kind of easy, confident laughter that came from never worrying about money. About anything, really. Juliana approached with the dessert tray. "Madam Harrington, we have—" The words died in her throat. Dorothy's gaze had locked onto Juliana's collarbone. Not at her face, not at the desserts. At the thin gold chain disappearing beneath her uniform collar. The table went quiet. "Where?" Dorothy's voice cut like glass. "Where did you get that?" Juliana's hand flew to her neck, fingertips finding the small oval locket she'd worn since... forever. Since before memory. "I'm sorry, but I don't..." "Take it off." Dorothy stood abruptly. Her chair scraped against polished floor. "Please, I need to see it." The other guests exchanged glances. Stephen, the dining room manager, materialized from nowhere, his expression pleasant but firm. "Mrs. Harrington, perhaps..." "Stephen." Dorothy didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on Juliana, and something in them made Juliana's chest tighten. Something desperate, something breaking. "I will pay whatever is necessary. 5 minutes. A back office. Anywhere private." She pulled a money clip from her purse. Hundreds. Juliana had never seen someone carry that much cash. Dorothy pressed the entire stack into Stephen's hand. "For her time. And for your discretion." Stephen's professional mask cracked for just a second. He looked at Juliana. She nodded. She didn't know why. The office was small, utilitarian, harsh fluorescent lights instead of chandeliers. Dorothy closed the door and leaned against it like she might collapse. "May I?" Her hand trembled as she reached toward the locket. Juliana unclasped it, the weight of it suddenly foreign in her palm. She'd touched it 1,000 times. A talisman. A prayer. The only thing that proved she'd belonged to someone, once. Dorothy took it with reverence. Her thumb found the tiny catch, and the locket opened. She made a sound. Not quite a gasp. Not quite a sob. "Oh God," Dorothy whispered. "Oh God, it's real." Juliana couldn't breathe. "What's real? I don't understand." Dorothy turned the locket toward her. Inside, the photo Juliana had memorized in 1,000 foster homes. A young woman with dark curls and kind eyes, one hand resting on a swollen belly. Smiling like she knew a beautiful secret. "This is my daughter." Dorothy's voice cracked. "This is Evelyn." The room tilted. "I bought her this locket when she told me she was pregnant." Dorothy's words came faster now, tumbling over each other. 24 years ago. She wore it every day. She was going to give it to her baby when she was old enough." Juliana's throat closed. "I don't have a mother. I never did. They found me at a fire station when I was 3 days old. No note, no name, just the locket," Dorothy finished. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the restaurant hummed with life and laughter. and people who knew where they came from. Dorothy reached out, her hand shaking, and touched Juliana's face. The gesture was so tender, it hurt. "My daughter died 23 years ago," she said softly. "In childbirth. They told me the baby died too. They told me there was nothing left." Juliana couldn't move, couldn't think. Dorothy's eyes were full of tears now, but also something else, something fierce and certain. "But if this locket is real," she whispered, "if you've had it since you were born, then you're not nothing left." The words hung in the air between them. "You're my granddaughter." I always wonder who's listening on the other side of the screen. Would you do me a favor? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your city, state, or country. I love hearing from you. It warms my heart to see how far these stories travel. The words hung between them like smoke. Juliana stepped back. Her spine hit the wall. No. No, that's not possible. The locket could have been stolen, sold, lost. Juliana's voice climbed higher. "You're Dorothy Harrington. I've seen you in the news. You think some waitress with your daughter's necklace is just going to magically be—" "I know how this sounds." Dorothy's hands were still shaking. "But I also know that locket never left Evelyn's neck. The police gave me her belongings after the fire. That wasn't among them." Fire. The word landed like a stone. Through the door's small window, a shadow moved. Stephen, pretending to adjust something on a nearby shelf. His collar was damp. When he pulled out his phone, his thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment before he slipped it back into his pocket without calling anyone. Dorothy caught the movement too. Her spine straightened, control sliding back into place like armor. "A DNA test," she said. "Private lab. Rush results. I can have preliminary answers by tomorrow evening. You can't just—" "I can." Dorothy's voice was gentle, but immovable. "I have resources, but I won't use them without your consent." She pulled a business card from her purse, heavy stock, embossed lettering. "This is a choice, Juliana, yours to make." Juliana stared at the card. The power dynamic was a physical thing in the room. This woman could probably buy the restaurant, could buy Stephen's silence, could buy anything, except the truth. "Why do you want this?" Juliana asked quietly. Dorothy's mask cracked again. "Because I buried my daughter 23 years ago and they never let me see the baby. They said she was too damaged from the fire. They said there was nothing to see." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What if they lied?" 24 years earlier. Dorothy stood in the doorway of Evelyn's childhood room. Her daughter was packing a duffel bag with angry, efficient movements. "You don't have to do this," Dorothy said. "Whatever he promised you." "He loves me, Mom." Evelyn was 22, brilliant, stubborn. "And I love him." "You don't know him. 6 months isn't—" "It's enough." Evelyn zipped the bag. When she looked up, there was something in her eyes Dorothy had never seen before. Defiance laced with fear. "I'll call you when the baby comes." She hadn't. 3 months later, the fire. An apartment in Queens. Faulty wiring, the investigator said. Evelyn and her boyfriend, both dead, and the baby. "We're so sorry, Mrs. Harrington." But they wouldn't let her see. Wouldn't let her hold even the body of her grandchild. Something about the severity of the burns. The need for immediate cremation. She'd demanded an investigation, hired lawyers, hit walls of paperwork and sympathetic dead ends. Eventually, she'd stopped pushing. Eventually, she'd learned to survive the not knowing. Juliana's hands were fists at her sides. She'd made rules in foster care, rules that kept you safe. Don't trust promises. Don't believe in fairy tales. Don't let yourself hope for a family that would never come. 27 homes in 18 years. Some okay, some terrible, most just indifferent. She'd learned to be invisible, useful, forgettable. The locket was the only thing she'd kept, the only proof that once, somewhere, Someone had wanted her enough to take a picture. Now this woman was offering an answer to the question that had hollowed her out since childhood. "Tomorrow," Juliana heard herself say. "I'll do the test tomorrow." Dorothy exhaled. "Thank you. But I'm not promising anything. I'm not hoping for anything." "I understand." They stood there, two strangers bound by a piece of jewelry and the ghost of a girl who'd died too young. 6 o'clock, Dorothy said. "My office. The address is on the card." Juliana nodded. Dorothy left first, her heels clicking away down the hallway with the same confidence she'd carried in. But something was different now. Something had shifted. Stephen appeared the moment Dorothy was gone. "Everything all right?" "Fine," Juliana lied. Dorothy stepped into the private elevator that led to her penthouse. The doors closed. Her reflection stared back from the polished steel, older, harder than Evelyn had ever been. For just a moment, she saw her daughter's face instead. Young, hopeful. One hand on her belly. A lullaby rose in Dorothy's memory, something she'd sung to Evelyn as a child. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." Outside, sirens wailed past the building. The melody cut off. Dorothy closed her eyes and rode the elevator up, up, up into the dark. Dorothy didn't sleep. By 6 a.m., her office was already full. 3 people sat across from her desk like chess pieces she'd positioned overnight. Marcus Chen, private investigator, 20 years with the NYPD before going private. He had the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Patricia Reeves, archivist, gray hair, gentle hands, a mind like a steel trap for records and inconsistencies. And David Kim, hospital liaison. He knew which doors to knock on, which files could be found, which couldn't. "Evelyn Harrington," Dorothy said. Her voice was steady now. She'd had hours to build the walls back up. "Died March 14th, 2002, Queens General Hospital. House fire in Astoria. I want everything." Marcus flipped open a tablet. "Official cause of death?" "Smoke inhalation, 3rd-degree burns." The words tasted like ash. Her boyfriend, Marcus Webb, died at the scene. The baby allegedly died shortly after emergency delivery. "Allegedly," Patricia repeated softly. "Find out what really happened." They scattered like soldiers. By noon, the first cracks appeared. Patricia called from the city archives. "The fire report exists. It checks out, mostly. But the hospital records are thin. No infant death certificate in the system. No burial permit." Dorothy's hand tightened on her phone. How is that possible? Someone removed them. Or they were never filed in the first place. Marcus was next. "I pulled the adoption agency data. There's a notation for private placement pending, dated 3 days after the fire. No finalization, no court records. And Dorothy?" He paused. "The signature on the placement form doesn't match the caseworker's signature on any other document in the file. Forgery. Or coercion. I'm checking death records for the caseworker next." Dorothy looked out at Manhattan stretching below her. Somewhere in that tangle of steel and glass, someone had stolen her granddaughter, and someone had been covering it up for 23 years. Juliana's hands shook as she poured coffee. "You're going to spill that." Mira appeared at her elbow. 5 years at Laurent's, the closest thing Juliana had to a friend. She had warm brown skin, knowing eyes, and zero tolerance for evasion. "I'm fine. You've refilled Table 12's water 4 times. They're practically swimming." Mira steered her toward the service corridor. "Talk." So Juliana told her. Everything. The locket, Dorothy, the DNA test scheduled for this evening. The impossible possibility that she might actually have a family. Mira was quiet for a long moment. "What if it's real?" Juliana whispered. "What if she's telling the truth? Then you get the thing you've wanted your whole life. Or what if she's just using me? Rich people do that. They have problems, they throw money at them, they don't care who gets hurt. Does she seem like she's using you? Juliana thought of Dorothy's shaking hands, her broken voice, the way she'd looked at the locket like it was a holy relic. No, she admitted. She seems like she's drowning. Mira squeezed her shoulder. Then maybe you both need this to be real. In his small office off the kitchen, Stephen sat very still. His computer screen glowed. An email from 15 years ago. Subject line blank. Sender anonymous. Keep quiet. Stay compliant. Your mortgage will be paid in full. It had been. Every month, mysteriously, until the house was his. He'd never questioned it. Never looked too close at the gift horse's teeth. Now Dorothy Harrington was asking questions. And that waitress with the locket was the answer. Stephen's finger hovered over the delete button. One click. The email would be gone. No trail. No proof he'd ever known anything. He clicked. The screen went blank. From his jacket pocket, he pulled an old key. Tarnished brass. Small. The kind that opened safety deposit boxes. He'd kept it for 17 years, never knowing why. Never daring to use it. Now he turned it over in his palm, feeling its weight. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again. He put the key back. Not yet. But soon. Maybe. If things got worse. If Dorothy kept digging. At 4 p.m., Marcus called. Dorothy put him on speaker. Patricia and David were back in her office, surrounded by papers and photographs and timelines that didn't add up. I found something, Marcus said. A name that appears in 3 separate places. Hospital shift logs the night Evelyn died, the adoption agency intake form, and a witness statement about the fire. What name? Gerald Fisher. He was a paralegal. Silence. Paralegal for whom? Dorothy asked, though ice was already forming in her veins. Henry Whitmore, Marcus said quietly. Your late husband's business attorney. The room tilted. Henry Whitmore. The man who'd handled the Harrington family's legal affairs for 40 years. Who'd been at Evelyn's funeral. Who'd held Dorothy's hand and told her how sorry he was. Who'd died of a heart attack 6 months later. Find Gerald Fisher, Dorothy said. Her voice was stone. Find him now. The lab courier arrived at 7 p.m. Dorothy's penthouse stretched across the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art that cost more than most people's houses, silence that money could buy. Juliana stood in the middle of it all and felt like she was drowning. The courier wore scrubs and carried a manila envelope like it was made of glass. Mrs. Harrington. He handed it to her. As requested. Dorothy's fingers were steady as she took it. Years of board meetings and hostile takeovers had taught her how to hide. But when the courier left and the door clicked shut, the mask cracked. Together? She asked. Juliana couldn't speak. She nodded. Dorothy opened the envelope, pulled out a single sheet. Her eyes scanned the page once, twice, like she couldn't believe what she was reading. Then she looked up. It's a match, she whispered. 99.97% probability. The room spun. You're Evelyn's daughter. Dorothy's voice broke. You're my granddaughter. Something inside Juliana shattered. 23 years, 27 foster homes, a lifetime of being nobody's child. And now, how? The word came out ragged. How did this happen? Dorothy didn't answer. She couldn't. She was crying. Not delicate tears. Not the controlled grief of a woman who'd learned to survive loss. Real sobs that shook her whole body. Decades of grief pouring out all at once. Juliana stood frozen. Part of her wanted to run. Part of her wanted to scream. Part of her wanted to collapse into this stranger's arms and finally let someone hold her. Instead, she shook. Rage and relief warring in her chest until she couldn't tell which was which. Someone took me, she said. Her voice was ice. Someone took me from my mother and threw me away like garbage. Dorothy looked up. Mascara streaked down her face. She looked nothing like the woman who'd stopped the restaurant 2 nights ago. She looked human. "We're going to find out who," she promised, "and we're going to make them pay." By 9 p.m., the media had the scent. Nobody knew how. Maybe a lab employee. Maybe Stephen. Maybe just the universe's cruel sense of timing. But suddenly, paparazzi swarmed the Grand Orpheus like locusts. Cameras flashing. Questions shouted through glass doors. Is it true Dorothy Harrington found her granddaughter? Was the baby stolen? Juliana! Juliana Brooks! How does it feel? Juliana watched from the staff entrance, heart hammering. Mira stood beside her, arms crossed. "You can't go out there," Mira said. "I have to get home." "Not through that." Mira pulled out her phone. "I'm calling you a car. Back entrance. Now." Stephen stood in his apartment. Small. Neat. The place that mysterious mortgage money had bought. His television showed the scene outside Laurent's. Dorothy Harrington's face filled the screen. Then Juliana's, pulled from her employee ID photo. Sources say DNA testing confirms the relationship. The question everyone's asking, where has this girl been for 23 years? If this story is touching your heart, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe. There's so much more to discover about what really happened that terrible night. Stephen's palms pressed against the window. The glass was cold. He remembered. A hospital corridor at 3 a.m. Fluorescent lights buzzing. A NICU nurse he'd never seen before, carrying something wrapped in a soft yellow blanket. "You're sure about this?" he'd asked. "The family's been paid," she'd said. "The lawyer's been paid, and now you're being paid. Everyone wins." "What about the baby?" She'd looked at him with dead eyes. "The baby gets to live. That's more than she was going to get in that fire." He'd taken the bundle. Driven to a fire station in Brooklyn. Left her in a plastic carrier with nothing but the clothes she wore and a gold locket around her tiny neck. He'd thought he was saving her. Now, watching Dorothy Harrington's tear-stained face on the news, he understood. He hadn't saved anyone. He'd just been another cog in someone else's machine. Stephen picked up his phone. The key sat on his coffee table, gleaming dully. Some doors couldn't stay closed forever. Dorothy sat in her study. The DNA report lay on her desk. Proof. Finally. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Older now. Shakier. Henry Whitmore. Her late husband's attorney. The man who'd held her hand at Evelyn's funeral. Who'd helped manage the estate, the foundation, the endless paperwork of grief. "Henry," Dorothy said, "I need your advice." "Dorothy." Something in his voice, a tremor. "I heard the news. I'm so sorry." "Don't." The word was sharp. "Don't you dare apologize." Silence stretched between them. "I need to know something," Dorothy continued. Her voice was deadly calm. "And I need you to tell me the truth. Your paralegal, Gerald Fisher. He was at the hospital the night Evelyn died." More silence. "Henry?" When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. The voice of a man who'd been carrying something heavy for far too long. "Dorothy," he whispered, "we need to talk, but not over the phone." For the first time in 30 years, Henry Whitmore sounded afraid. Dorothy's study had become a war room. Financial ledgers from the 90s covered every surface. Marcus stood by the window, tablet glowing. Patricia sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by paper trails, and Juliana perched on the edge of a leather chair, feeling like an imposter in her grandmother's life. "Here." Patricia held up a bank statement. Harrington Foundation made a donation to Queens General in March 2002. $2.5 million for the NICU expansion. Dorothy leaned closer. I authorized that. After Evelyn died, I wanted something good to come from. Look at the routing. Patricia traced a line with her finger. The money passed through a shell company first. Wintergreen Holdings, LLC. Registered in Delaware. Dissolved in 2003. Who owned it? Marcus pulled up a document on his tablet. Henry Whitmore, sole proprietor. The air left the room. He laundered my grief, Dorothy said quietly. My money. He took a cut, Marcus confirmed. 300,000, buried in processing fees. Juliana's hands curled into fists. He profited from stealing me? No one had an answer. 31 years earlier. Henry Whitmore sat across from Dorothy at a restaurant much like Laurent's. She was 35, newly promoted to CFO, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove herself to men who doubted her. You're going to be extraordinary, he'd said. And she had been. She'd built an empire. Henry had been there for all of it, every merger, every acquisition, every triumph. He'd loved her in his way. Not romantically. Something deeper. Something possessive. Then Evelyn was born. Henry watched Dorothy pour her brilliance into raising a daughter who would inevitably surpass her. Watched Evelyn grow wild and independent, refusing to fit into the legacy Dorothy had built. She's throwing it all away, Henry had said when Evelyn got pregnant. That boy, Marcus Webb, he's nobody. She'll ruin everything you've worked for. Dorothy had been furious. She's my daughter, not a business acquisition. But Henry couldn't let it go. The Harrington name meant something. Legacy meant something. When the fire happened, when Evelyn died, Henry had seen an opportunity. The baby won't survive, the doctor had told him in the hallway. Gerald Fisher stood beside him, taking notes. Third-degree burns, even if she makes it through the night. What if she does? Henry had asked. And Gerald, loyal Gerald, had understood immediately. Then we protect the family. We protect Dorothy from another loss. They'd called it mercy. There's more. Patricia pulled a document from a file box. Old paper, yellowed at the edges. A notarized directive, allegedly signed by Evelyn Smith 2 weeks before she died. Dorothy took it with shaking hands. I, Evelyn Smith, request complete anonymity for my child in the event of my death. No family contact, no publicity. Let her have a normal life, away from wealth and expectation. The signature at the bottom looked like Evelyn's. Almost. It's forged, Juliana said. She didn't know how she knew. She just did. The notary stamp is real, Marcus said. But the handwriting analysis I ran shows inconsistencies. Someone traced Evelyn's signature from another document. Dorothy's face had gone pale. Henry. Probably Gerald Fisher, Marcus corrected. Under Henry's orders. Why? Juliana's voice cracked. Why would he do this? Dorothy looked at her granddaughter, really looked at her, and saw the answer written in every year of abandonment, every foster home, every night spent wondering why nobody wanted her. Because he thought he was protecting me, Dorothy whispered. From you. The lakeside chapel was 2 hours north of the city. Juliana drove herself. She needed to be alone with this, with the ghost of the mother she'd never known. The building was small, white, nestled between trees that whispered in the wind. In the locket photo, Evelyn had stood right there on the steps, one hand on her belly, smiling. An elderly man was sweeping the pathway. White hair, kind eyes, the slow movements of someone who'd been doing the same job for decades. Excuse me, Juliana said. Did you work here in 2002? He looked up. Been here 40 years, miss. She showed him the photo. Do you remember this woman? He studied it carefully. His expression shifted. The pregnant girl, yes. She came here every Sunday for about 2 months. Sat in the back pew, prayed. Did she say anything? Once. He smiled sadly. I asked her when the baby was due. She said April. Said she was going to name her daughter Julia. He looked at Juliana. Is that you? Tears burned her eyes. She died before I was born. I'm sorry. The arrests came in waves. Henry Whitmore was first. Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, fraud. The charges stacked like tombstones. He didn't fight extradition, didn't post bail, just sat in a cell and stared at the walls. Gerald Fisher was next, found in Florida, living under a different name. He'd been running for 20 years. When they showed him the evidence, he broke down and confessed everything. The hospital administrator, Thomas Brennan, tried to disappear. Marcus found him in Montreal. Extradition took 3 days. Stephen Hale cut a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. He'd been a scared kid who'd saved a life. The DA saw the difference. So did the jury of public opinion. Queens General paid $17 million in fines. The NICU director resigned. 3 board members stepped down. The hospital's general counsel released a statement that used the word apology 14 times and meant none of them. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. The shareholder meeting was standing room only. Dorothy stood at the podium in a charcoal suit. No notes, no teleprompter, just her and the truth. 23 years ago, she began. My daughter Evelyn died. I was told my granddaughter died with her. I grieved. I moved on. I built this company into what it is today, believing that work was all I had left. Silence in the room. Camera flashes. I was wrong. Her voice didn't waver. My granddaughter lived. She survived because one hospital worker had the courage to act when others chose complicity, and she was stolen from me by men I trusted, men who worked for this family, who were paid by Harrington money. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Henry Whitmore used company resources to cover up murder. He embezzled funds, he manipulated records, and he did it all believing he was protecting our legacy. Dorothy's jaw tightened. He was wrong. There is no legacy worth a child's life. There is no reputation worth more than the truth. She paused. Let the weight settle. I'm not resigning. I'm not hiding behind PR statements. I'm telling you exactly what happened because you deserve to know. Because Juliana deserves the truth, told in the light. Dorothy's voice softened. And because my daughter, Evelyn, deserved better than what we gave her. The room erupted. Questions shouted, cameras flashing. Dorothy walked off the stage. Evelyn's room had been untouched for 23 years. A shrine, really. Dorothy had kept it exactly as her daughter left it. Posters on the walls, books on the shelves, a closet full of clothes that would never be worn again. Juliana stood in the doorway, afraid to enter. It's okay, Dorothy said softly. She would have wanted you here. They opened boxes together, yearbooks, report cards, a journal with Evelyn's looping handwriting. Juliana traced the words with trembling fingers. March 3rd, 2002. I felt her kick today. Really kick. Like she's telling me she's strong, that she's going to be okay. I'm going to name her Julia, Jules for short, and I'm going to tell her every day that she's loved. Juliana's tears fell on the page. Dorothy found a box of VHS tapes. Home videos, she said. Would you like to see? They set up the old TV. Hit play. The screen flickered. Then, Evelyn, 16 years old, running through a sprinkler in the backyard, laughing, the locket flashing gold at her throat. Mom, turn it off! Teenage Evelyn shouted, grinning. Never! Dorothy's voice from behind the camera. Younger, lighter. They watched for hours. Evelyn at Christmas. Evelyn's high school graduation. Evelyn arguing passionately about something at the dinner table. Hands flying. Eyes bright. She was beautiful, Juliana whispered. You look like her. Dorothy reached over, squeezed her hand. You have her smile. I wish I'd known her. So do I. They sat in silence, watching the ghost of Evelyn dance across the screen. A life cut short. A love that should have been. 3 days later, Dorothy found Juliana in the study. "I've been thinking," Dorothy said, "about the future, about what you want." Juliana looked up from the book she'd been reading. One of Evelyn's, On Revolution by Hannah Arendt. Margin notes in her mother's handwriting. "Smith Holdings needs new leadership," Dorothy continued. "Young, ethical, someone who understands what really matters." She paused. "I'd like you to consider joining the board, eventually taking over." Juliana's breath caught. "I'm a waitress." "You're my granddaughter. You're Evelyn's daughter. You're brilliant and strong and—" "I want to be a nurse." Dorothy blinked. "What?" "I've been thinking too." Juliana set the book down. "About Stephen. About how one person doing the right thing saved my life. I want to do that. I want to help people." "You can help people from a boardroom. I can do both." Juliana met her grandmother's eyes. Nursing school during the day, board meetings at night, learning the business, learning how to make policy that actually protects people. She smiled. "People and policy. That's what matters, right?" Dorothy stared at her, then laughed. It was the first real laugh she'd managed in weeks. "You are exactly like your mother." "Good," Juliana said. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. Dorothy stood backstage with Juliana, adjusting her granddaughter's collar. The same nervous gesture she'd done with Evelyn before school plays and debate tournaments. "You don't have to do this," Dorothy said. "I can speak for both of us." "No," Juliana's voice was steady. "I need to do this. For Mom. For me." "What will you say?" Juliana touched the locket at her throat. Evelyn's locket. Her locket. "The truth," she said simply. "That's all anyone deserves." Dorothy nodded, stepped aside. "Ladies first," she said. And Juliana Brooks, Juliana Smith, walked onto the stage to face the world. He was quiet for a moment. She seemed happy, though. Scared, but happy. She talked about how much she wanted to be a mother, how she'd do it better than hers had. Juliana's throat closed. "She never came back after February," the groundskeeper continued. "I always wondered what happened." "Fire," Juliana managed. "She died in a fire." He blessed himself. God rest her soul. Dorothy was alone when Patricia found it, buried at the bottom of an archive box. Old hospital administrative files that should have been destroyed decades ago. A laminated ID badge. Stephen Hale, Queens General Hospital, Food Services, 2001-2002. Patricia held it up. "Dorothy, you need to see this." Dorothy took the badge, stared at the young face in the photo. 20 years younger. No gray in his hair. But unmistakably the same man who'd watched Juliana serve desserts 2 nights ago. Stephen Hale hadn't been a restaurant manager 23 years ago. He'd been inside the hospital the night Evelyn died. Dorothy's phone was in her hand before she'd consciously decided to pick it up. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Find Stephen Hale," she said. "Right now." They found him at his apartment in Queens. Dorothy arrived with Marcus. No police, not yet. She needed answers first, and cops had a way of making people lawyer up and shut down. Stephen opened the door on the second knock. He looked smaller somehow, older, like he'd been expecting this moment for 23 years. "Mrs. Harrington." His voice was hollow. "We need to talk." He stepped aside. Let them in. The apartment was modest, clean, a life built on silence and secrets. Stephen gestured to the couch but didn't sit himself. He stood by the window, arms crossed, like a man preparing for execution. "I worked at Queens General," he said before Dorothy could speak. "Food Services, night shift, March 2002. Dorothy's jaw tightened. "You were there when my daughter died. I was there when they killed her." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stepped forward. "Explain." Stephen's hands shook. I was delivering meal trays to the 4th floor. Around 2 a.m., I heard voices in the stairwell. 2 men. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but he swallowed hard. One of them said, "The fire's set for 3. Make sure the boyfriend's unconscious first. The girl, too." Dorothy's world tilted. "I didn't understand," Stephen continued. "I thought maybe I'd misheard. But then one of them said, 'What about the baby?' And the other one, older voice, authoritative, he said, 'The baby's a complication. Handle it.'" "Handle it," Dorothy repeated. Her voice was ice. I followed them, watched them leave through the service entrance. Then I went to the maternity ward. Stephen's eyes were distant, remembering. "Your grandson, granddaughter, had just been born. Emergency C-section. The baby was in the NICU. Healthy. Perfect." Juliana stood in the doorway. She'd arrived minutes after Dorothy, couldn't stay away. Now she pressed her hand to the wall to stay upright. "I didn't know what to do," Stephen said. "I was 24, scared. But I knew if those men came back—" His voice cracked. "So I took her." "You stole me," Juliana whispered. "I saved you." He looked at her. "At 3:15 a.m., there was a fire in Astoria. Your mother died. Her boyfriend died. If you'd still been in that hospital, I would have died too." Stephen nodded. Dorothy's hands were fists. "Where did you take her?" "Fire station in Brooklyn. I wrapped her in a blanket, put her in a carrier. I left the locket because—" He stopped. "Because she deserved to know someone loved her, even if she never knew who." "The paperwork," Marcus interjected. "Birth records, hospital documentation, all of it vanished. How?" "I don't know." Stephen's voice was raw. "I went back to work the next night. Everything was gone, like the baby had never existed. And then, 3 days later, I found an envelope in my locker. 'Money,' Dorothy said. $20,000, cash, and a note. 'Keep quiet. Stay compliant. You'll be taken care of.'" He laughed bitterly. "For 17 years, my mortgage got paid. Every month. Like clockwork. I never asked questions." "Where did the money come from?" Marcus pulled out his tablet. "I traced it eventually. Took years, but I'm not stupid." Stephen pulled a folded paper from his pocket, handed it to Dorothy. "Whitmore Family Trust. Disbursements marked as charitable contributions." Dorothy stared at the paper. "Henry. Always Henry." Juliana's voice was small. "You left me at a fire station and walked away." Stephen flinched. "I was trying to protect you." "You abandoned me." Tears streamed down her face. "I spent 18 years in foster care. Do you know what that's like? Do you have any idea?" "I know." His voice broke. "I know, and I'm sorry. Every day for 23 years, I've wondered if I made the right choice. If you were okay. If you were alive." "You could have come back," Juliana said. "You could have checked. I was afraid." The admission cost him. "Afraid they'd kill me. Afraid they'd finish what they started and kill you too." Silence filled the apartment. Dorothy stood. Her face was carved from stone. "Who were the men in the stairwell?" "One was Gerald Fisher, Henry Whitmore's paralegal. The other—" Stephen hesitated. "I only saw him from behind, but he was wearing a hospital administrator's badge." "Name?" Dorothy demanded. "I don't know, but I kept something." Stephen walked to his bedroom, came back with a small brass key, the same one he'd held the night before, turning it over in his palm. He pressed it into Dorothy's hand. "Safe deposit box, Bank of Manhattan, branch 447. Everything I've collected over 23 years is in there. Documents, recordings, names." He met her eyes. "If I disappear, that box explains everything." Dorothy closed her fingers around the key. It was warm from his pocket. "Why give this to me now?" Stephen looked at Juliana. Then back at Dorothy. "Because you're not going to stop," he said quietly. "You're going to tear this whole thing open. And when you do, people are going to die." He walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. "I'd rather it be me than her. We're getting close to the truth now. If you're invested in seeing justice for Evelyn and Juliana, keep listening. The confrontation you've been waiting for is almost here." The safe deposit box was small. Dorothy opened it in a private room at the bank. Marcus stood beside her. Juliana sat in a chair by the door, arms wrapped around herself. Inside, a manila folder thick with papers. Bank transfer receipts, photocopied hospital logs, and a cassette tape in a cracked plastic case, labeled in Stephen's careful handwriting. March 13th, 2002, 11:47 p.m. Dorothy's hands trembled as she picked it up. "There's a player in the conference room," the bank manager said quietly. They listened in silence. Static. Then voices, muffled but clear enough. "Can't let this continue. The Smith girl is a liability." Henry Whitmore's voice. Younger but unmistakable. "Dorothy's already furious about the pregnancy. If the baby's born, if Evelyn tries to claim Harrington money, so what do you suggest?" A second voice. Gerald Fisher. "An accident. Clean, tragic. The boyfriend's already been flagged for drug use. Make it look like he started a fire. Overdose, carelessness, whatever." "And the baby?" Silence for 3 long seconds. "The baby complicates matters. Handle it quietly. No records, no trace. Protect the legacy." The recording ended. Juliana ran to the bathroom and vomited. Dorothy's penthouse had never felt so cold. She'd arranged everything carefully. The board review was a fiction. There was no board, but the audience was real. 2 NYPD detectives sat on the leather sofa. Detective Chen, homicide. Detective Reyes, fraud. They'd come quietly, off book, because Dorothy Harrington asked. A journalist named Sarah Kim sat in the corner with a notebook. Freelance. Trusted. Someone who'd built a career on exposing powerful men who thought they were untouchable. Marcus stood by the window. And Henry Whitmore sat in the center of it all, silver-haired and distinguished, looking at Dorothy with something like sorrow. "I don't understand why I'm here," he said gently. "Dorothy, if this is about Juliana, I'm thrilled for you. Truly. Finding your granddaughter after all these years? Stop talking." Dorothy's voice could have cut glass. She pressed play on the recorder. Henry's voice filled the room. "The baby complicates matters. Handle it quietly." The color drained from Henry's face. "That was taken out of context," he said quickly. "I was discussing legal options, protecting Dorothy from..." "From what?" Dorothy stood. "From her own granddaughter? From scandal." Henry's composure was cracking. "Evelyn was unstable. She'd gotten involved with a drug addict. You were vulnerable, Dorothy, grieving. I made decisions to protect you. You murdered my daughter." The words landed like a bomb. Henry went very still. "That's not..." "The fire was arson." Marcus held up a file. "Fire Marshal's report from 2002. Accelerant detected. Investigation closed after witness statements disappeared and the lead investigator retired early." He flipped a page. "With a sudden windfall. Paid from one of your shell companies." "Evelyn was going to destroy everything you built," Henry said. His voice was rising now, defensive. "That boy would have drained the family fortune. And a baby? An illegitimate grandchild? The press would have..." "So you killed her." Dorothy's voice shook. "You killed my daughter and stole my granddaughter." "I chose order." Henry was standing now. "I chose the legacy, the foundation. Everything you and I built together." "We?" Dorothy laughed. It was a terrible sound. "You did this for us?" "For you," Henry said. "I did it for you." Juliana stood. She'd been silent until now, a ghost in the corner. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, deadly. "What gave you the right to decide if I lived with my family?" Henry looked at her. really looked at her, and something in his face crumbled. "You don't understand," he whispered. "Explain it to me." Juliana stepped closer. "Explain how you get to choose who deserves to exist, who deserves to be loved, who deserves a family." "It wasn't about you," Henry said. His voice was breaking. "It was about preserving—" "What?" Juliana's eyes burned. "Money? A name? My mother died. I spent my entire childhood wondering why nobody wanted me. And you're telling me it was about preserving a legacy?" "Yes." The word came out strangled. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you." Silence. Detective Chen stood. "Henry Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, obstruction of justice." "She was going to ruin everything," Henry said. He wasn't looking at the detective. He was staring at Dorothy. "Evelyn. She was reckless, selfish. She didn't understand what she had, what you'd built." "She was 22, Dorothy said softly. "She was my daughter. And you took her from me." Henry's eyes moved to Juliana, to the locket around her neck catching the light. "I watched them bring you out of the NICU," he said. His voice was hollow. "You were so small, wrapped in a yellow blanket, and I thought—" He stopped. "I thought Dorothy doesn't need this. She'll move on. She'll be stronger without the burden." "Burden," Juliana repeated. "But you looked like her." Henry's voice cracked. "You looked exactly like your mother." Sirens rose from the street below, red and blue lights painting the windows. Detective Reyes pulled out handcuffs. Henry didn't resist. He just stood there, staring at the locket, tears streaming down his face. "She looked like her mother," he whispered again. And for the first time in 30 years, Henry Whitmore told the truth. "I'm sorry." The arrests came in waves. Henry Whitmore was first. Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, fraud. The charges stacked like tombstones. He didn't fight extradition, didn't post bail, just sat in a cell and stared at the walls. Gerald Fisher was next. Found in Florida, living under a different name. He'd been running for 20 years. When they showed him the evidence, he broke down and confessed everything. The hospital administrator, Thomas Brennan, tried to disappear. Marcus found him in Montreal. Extradition took 3 days. Stephen Hale cut a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. He'd been a scared kid who'd saved a life. The DA saw the difference. So did the jury of public opinion. Queen's General paid $17 million in fines. The NICU director resigned. 3 board members stepped down. The hospital's general counsel released a statement that used the word apology 14 times and meant none of them. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. The shareholder meeting was standing room only. Dorothy stood at the podium in a charcoal suit. No notes, no teleprompter, just her and the truth. 23 years ago, she began, my daughter Evelyn died. I was told my granddaughter died with her. I grieved. I moved on. I built this company into what it is today, believing that work was all I had left. Silence in the room. Camera flashes. I was wrong. Her voice didn't waver. My granddaughter lived. She survived because one hospital worker had the courage to act when others chose complicity. And she was stolen from me by men I trusted. Men who worked for this family, who were paid by Harrington money. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Henry Whitmore used company resources to cover up murder. He embezzled funds. He manipulated records, and he did it all believing he was protecting our legacy. Dorothy's jaw tightened. He was wrong. There is no legacy worth a child's life. There is no reputation worth more than the truth. She paused. Let the weight settle. I'm not resigning. I'm not hiding behind PR statements. I'm telling you exactly what happened because you deserve to know. Because Juliana deserves the truth told in the light. Dorothy's voice softened. and because my daughter Evelyn deserved better than what we gave her." The room erupted, questions shouted, cameras flashing. Dorothy walked off the stage. Evelyn's room had been untouched for 23 years. A shrine, really. Dorothy had kept it exactly as her daughter left it. Posters on the walls, books on the shelves, a closet full of clothes that would never be worn again. Juliana stood in the doorway, afraid to enter. "It's okay," Dorothy said softly. "She would have wanted you here." They opened boxes together. Yearbooks, report cards, a journal with Evelyn's looping handwriting. Juliana traced the words with trembling fingers. March 3rd, 2002. "I felt her kick today. Really kick. Like she's telling me she's strong. That she's going to be okay. I'm going to name her Julia. Jules for short. And I'm going to tell her every day that she's loved." Juliana's tears fell on the page. Dorothy found a box of VHS tapes. "Home videos," she said. "Would you like to see?" They set up the old TV. Hit play. The screen flickered. Then, Evelyn, 16 years old, running through a sprinkler in the backyard, laughing, the locket flashing gold at her throat. "Mom, turn it off!" Teenage Evelyn shouted, grinning. "Never!" Dorothy's voice from behind the camera, younger, lighter. They watched for hours. Evelyn at Christmas, Evelyn's high school graduation, Evelyn arguing passionately about something at the dinner table, hands flying, eyes bright. "She was beautiful," Juliana whispered. "You look like her." Dorothy reached over, squeezed her hand. "You have her smile." "I wish I'd known her." "So do I." They sat in silence, watching the ghost of Evelyn dance across the screen. A life cut short. A love that should have been. 3 days later, Dorothy found Juliana in the study. "I've been thinking," Dorothy said, "about the future, about what you want." Juliana looked up from the book she'd been reading. One of Evelyn's, On Revolution by Hannah Arendt. Margin notes in her mother's handwriting. "Harrington Holdings needs new leadership," Dorothy continued. "Young, ethical, someone who understands what really matters." She paused. "I'd like you to consider joining the board, eventually taking over." Juliana's breath caught. "I'm a waitress. You're my granddaughter. You're Evelyn's daughter. You're brilliant and strong and I want to be a nurse." Dorothy blinked. "What?" "I've been thinking too." Juliana set the book down. "About Stephen. About how one person doing the right thing saved my life. I want to do that. I want to help people." "You can help people from a boardroom." "I can do both." Juliana met her grandmother's eyes. Nursing school during the day, board meetings at night, learning the business, learning how to make policy that actually protects people. She smiled. "People and policy. That's what matters, right?" Dorothy stared at her, then laughed. It was the first real laugh she'd managed in weeks. "You are exactly like your mother." "Good," Juliana said. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. Dorothy stood backstage with Juliana, adjusting her granddaughter's collar. The same nervous gesture she'd done with Evelyn before school plays and debate tournaments. "You don't have to do this," Dorothy said. "I can speak for both of us." "No." Juliana's voice was steady. "I need to do this. For Mom. For me." "What will you say?" Juliana touched the locket at her throat. Evelyn's locket. Her locket. "The truth," she said simply. "That's all anyone deserves." Dorothy nodded, stepped aside. "Ladies first," she said. And Juliana Brooks, Juliana Smith, walked onto the stage to face the world. The truth is out, but there's still one more important moment to come. Stay with us for the beautiful ending this family deserves. The convention center blazed with camera lights. Juliana stood backstage, smoothing down the front of her navy dress. Through the curtain gap, she could see them, reporters crammed shoulder to shoulder, Cameras on tripods, phone screens glowing like stars. The world watching. Dorothy appeared beside her. She wore charcoal gray, her grandmother's armor, but her hand found Juliana's and squeezed. "Ready?" Dorothy asked. Juliana touched the locket, felt its familiar weight. "For Mom." They walked onto the stage together. The room erupted. Questions shouted over questions, flashes strobing. Dorothy raised one hand, and the chaos settled into something like silence. "Thank you for coming," Dorothy said. Her voice carried across the hall, steady and clear. "We're here to tell you about my daughter, Evelyn, and about what happened to the granddaughter I thought I'd lost." She stepped back, made space. Juliana moved to the microphone. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "My name is Juliana Brooks," she began. "For 23 years I thought I was nobody. I grew up in 27 foster homes. I aged out of the system with a high school diploma, a duffel bag, and one piece of jewelry I couldn't explain." She touched the locket. "I spent my whole life wondering why nobody wanted me, why I wasn't worth keeping." Her throat tightened. "I thought there was something wrong with me, something broken that made me unlovable." Silence in the room. Even the cameras had stopped clicking. "But I wasn't broken," Juliana said. Her voice grew stronger. "I was stolen. I was somebody's granddaughter all along. I was my mother's daughter. Evelyn Smith. Evelyn Harrington. She died wanting me, loving me. And powerful men decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience." She looked at Dorothy. Her grandmother's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm standing here today because one hospital worker chose courage over complicity, because my grandmother refused to stop searching for the truth. And because my mother loved me enough to give me this." She held up the locket. "So I'd always know I belonged to someone." The tears came then. She didn't try to stop them. "I thought I was nobody," Juliana whispered. "But I was somebody's. I am somebody's granddaughter." Dorothy stepped forward, wrapped her arms around Juliana, and in front of the entire world, they held each other and cried, for Evelyn, for the lost years, for everything stolen and everything found. When they could speak again, Dorothy took the microphone. "Today, we're announcing the creation of the Evelyn Hope Foundation," she said. "Named for my daughter. Funded by the Harrington family. Its mission is simple: ensure what happened to Juliana never happens to another child." She outlined it methodically. Independent NICU audits, hospital safeguards, mandatory reporting systems, oversight for private adoptions, advocacy for foster children aging out of the system. "Every hospital that takes our money will submit to random inspections," Dorothy continued. "Every placement agency will face scrutiny. Every child who enters the system will have an advocate who cannot be bought or intimidated." Her voice hardened. "Power means protection," she said, "or it means nothing." The room exploded with questions again. Dorothy answered them all. Names, dates, dollar amounts. She held nothing back. Marcus stood at the edge of the stage with files ready. Patricia fielded follow-ups. Detective Chen confirmed ongoing investigations. It wasn't just a press conference. It was a reckoning. 6 months later, the Grand Orpheus had a new name etched in gold above the entrance: Evelyn's Grace. Dorothy sat at a corner table, her table now, with a pot of tea and the morning paper. The foundation had opened its first oversight office. 3 hospitals had already failed inspections. 2 adoption agencies had their licenses revoked. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. The dinner service was starting. Soft piano music drifted from the bar. Crystal gleamed, and Juliana moved between tables in scrubs. She'd just finished her shift at the hospital, stopping to greet regulars, checking on an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary. She caught Dorothy's eye across the room and smiled. Dorothy smiled back. Juliana's hand drifted to her collarbone, found the locket there, warm from her skin. The photo inside had been joined by another, Dorothy and Juliana, taken the day the foundation opened. 3 generations in one small oval of gold. She thought of her mother. 22 years old, terrified and hopeful, one hand on her belly, singing lullabies to a daughter she'd never hold. "I'm here, Mom," Juliana thought. "I made it." The locket rested against her heart, keeping time with her pulse. The past didn't vanish. It learned to live, right over her heart. Thank you so much for staying with Juliana and Dorothy through their journey. If this story touched your heart, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe for more meaningful stories. Your support means the world to me.